Is there something interesting in everything we read? Give a reason for your answer and share them at the elaconnection at gmail.com. Pause here to jot down your thoughts. Being interested in a text is easy when you pick the text. Like science fiction and dinosaurs? 400 pages will fly by. Want to add new angles to your shot list? Your own drive to gain a skill you want will guide you through a text. When reading a text we want to read, based on our own interests or our own self-improvement needs towards a goal we want, finding interesting tidbits is easy. But what if we're reading something we don't want to read or is not aligned with our own interests? Can a text that we have to read become interesting? The English major handed a physics book? An engineer handed a volume on the Romantics? Any student who looks at the page count before reading the title? Can any reader find something interesting in any text? Let's find out together. Now, this will be shocking. I was an English major and I grew up reading constantly. For me, what I assume to be the most uninteresting reading is in the sciences and maths. The only science book on my shelf is The Science of Everyday Life from 1931. I have it because it was my grandfather's. It will have to do as our example text. Our pre-read question: can I find what is interesting in a science textbook? Chapter 1: Air and Air Pressure. Personally, I don't think about air unless I'm trying to sing and can't hold a long note. Wendy girl, it flies so high, second song to the right, and train till morning, back to Neverland, to take us home again. Air is a real substance. Air does wonderful things when in very rapid motion. The rushing, whirling air of a tornado sometimes plucks the feathers from chickens and drives straws into wood. Such windstorms have demolished houses and twisted trees like so much twine. Tornadoes make me think of The Wizard of Oz. We have all seen hats blown off on windy days, and we have all stood in front of electric fans and felt the air being moved by them. Windmills, sailing vessels, and kites all depend upon moving air. The airplane's motion depends upon the motion of the propeller, but the propeller would be of no use if it had no resistance to work upon, and it is the air which furnishes this resistance. The idea that resistance builds muscle, as we are doing by resisting passive reading to build think muscles with active reading. Such facts as these indicate that air, even though we do not see it, is a real substance. As we work out the problems of this chapter, we shall find proof of this. We shall learn also something about air pressure and how it is used, and something about the way in which air carries sound. Following in the footsteps of Galileo, Count Zeppelin, and the Wright brothers, we shall demonstrate the principles that underlie certain instruments and machines which have widened man's knowledge of the air and its uses of it. With the Wright brothers, I try to remind myself that the Wright brothers' flight had only happened 25 years before this scientific book was written. Look, pre-read questions. Problem 1. What is in an empty glass? Directions. Procure an empty glass and a basin of water. Invert the glass and press it into the water in such a manner as to not allow any bubbles to escape. Questions. To what extent does the water rise in the glass? No bubbles? I can't tell if there's any water in the turtle glass or none. Why does it not fill the entire glass? What does this experiment show us about air? Explain. If you permit bubbles to escape, does the water then rise in the glass? Why? What if we filled the turtle glass halfway and then dropped it into the no bubble zone? Look, a meniscus line. Therefore, the first time, there was no water in the glass. It was all air. The commonality to my interest sparks lay in two sections. First, I brought my life and interests into the conversation with the text. What interests me here is the hands-on approach the text encourages. The idea that the text gives me a simple experiment I can run today is interesting. So, in just 2 pages of what I thought was going to be boring science text, I found 3 things that interest me. Our question now becomes, is there a commonality between what sparked my interest in science? Connected the text to things I already enjoyed. I think that any text we read can be tied to our own lives and our own interests. We just have to be actively reading to tie our life to the text. The second part of interest is the hands-on call to action the text has. We can be called to do our own experiments, try out new math formulas, or direct the scene of fiction we're reading. Bring the text to life with action using knowledge you gained from reading the text. Action, by definition, is interesting. Congrats! You are now thoughtfully reading by tying your interests to any and all texts. Share your think aloud. Show us how you took what you thought would be a boring text and how you were able to tie it to your life and your interests. How did the text interest you to think in new ways or do new actions? Share at the elaconnection@gmail.com. Your Think Aloud may be featured in a future video. Join us next time when we think aloud about directing the movie in our head. Till then, interact with your text as an active reader.